In 2015, the United Nations agreed on 17 Sustainable Development Goals. When they are achieved, the life of billions of people will be better. However, their interactions are complex and attaining one goal can make it more difficult to reach another. Therefore, we only want to focus on 3 goals and then apply them to one sector: decentralized and renewable energy production and use. We will sketch pathways of how the energy sector can be transformed in our assigned country. Therefore, our name is Power to Somalia. The 3 SDGs are SDG number 7, that aims to make energy clean and affordable, SDG 8, which focuses on decent work and economic growth, and SDG 15, Life on Land, which aims to protect, restore and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems. Achieving SDG 7 will improve SDG 8, especially in the energy sector itself, as the transition towards clean energy can generate economic growth and create numerous jobs. However, attention needs to be paid to what extent the transition will lead to an insecure energy supply and therefore less economic growth. The interactions between clean and affordable energy and life on land are equally complex. On one hand, renewables alleviate the damages from fossil fuels, but they also compete with life on land for space. And lastly, the interactions between decent work and economic growth and life on land heavily depend on balance. A healthy soil can fuel economic growth in the agricultural sector, but if the soil is used too intensively, its quality will reduce and it cannot facilitate economic growth anymore.
Our transformation pathway should lead to decentralized and renewable energy production and use. However, mapping a transformation pathway requires an in-depth understanding of the present situation. Currently, there is a focus on unlimited growth based on activities that degrade the environment. Sustainable growth is not dominant, but is gaining attention in different parts of the world. Secondly, droughts and climate change threats are present, as is water scarcity in large parts of the world. Most of the fresh water is used for agriculture, with desertification as a result. These conditions also cause biodiversity loss. Lastly, there are strong political world leaders that dominate developing countries. Conflicts at national governments, border conflicts, and cross-border tribal conflicts are prevalent, especially in the global south. The global trade network is influenced to a great extent by leading nations, but also by international relations. As sustainability-related global policy is highly dependent on international relations and conflicts, it is often not sufficient.
The current situation of the SDGs in Somalia as of now is as follows. Concerning SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, the situation is not good. In the civil war in the early 90s, the energy grid collapsed. Since then, it has mostly not been set up again. Petroleum-powered generators are the most common source of energy in urban areas, whereas in rural areas, energy is hardly available at all. This is neither affordable nor sustainable, and renewable energy sources are near non-existent. Additionally, there are oil fields being found in Somalia, creating a threat to sustainable energy in Somalia in the future. As of SDG 8, the situation is even worse. More than half of the country's population lives under the international poverty line. Livestock is the main export product of Somalia with 80%, and the economic growth is not enough to combat poverty. The absence of research and development contributes to this even more, since agricultural and food sectors rely heavily on it. There are no functional commercial banks in Somalia, making the economy unstable and vulnerable to corruption. Considering SDG 15, Somalia knows 3 threats to life on land. Firstly, locust plagues occur in the country almost each year. These plagues strip the country of vegetation as they go. Secondly, uncontrolled resource use highly impacts the environment in Somalia. And thirdly, long droughts cause desertification, which has negative impacts on animals and plants alike.
As shown, the situation in Somalia is alarming. Before more nuanced pathways can be imagined, the fundamental issues, such as hunger, need to be addressed. The most promising short-term solutions include local initiatives and local governments, of first pathway, which will then enable central government and larger companies to further improve the living conditions later on, second pathway. The first pathway focuses on affordable technologies stemming from frugal innovations and multifunctional technologies. To be able to afford them, capital is necessary, which can be obtained either from microcredits or via group purchasing. The latter already emphasizes the need for community building and engagement, which can be facilitated by either a bottom-up seed, community projects on renewable energy, or a more top-down seat, where cities all over Africa are working together. This will lead to substantial improvement of living conditions and will build the foundation for more centralized governance, and thus Pathway 2 to come into existence. Pathway 2 is characterized by governmental actions that mainly aim to grow the energy sector and introduce more complex technologies to further improve the life of people. Thereby, the sector should become large enough so that the present oil reserves do not need to be used anymore to fuel economic growth and provide decent work. The latter can be achieved by offering retraining centers where people can learn how to research, build, and manage the technologies. In this pathway, the technologies are more complex and more financially demanding, such as seawater greenhouses, solar ponds, or the biomimicry technologies produced by the Elytra initiative and Full Circle. The funding for this pathway might come from the government, private companies, and/or development aid.
We have developed a diverse set of scenario axes to explore how our pathways perform in different futures for Somalia. In a future in which the economy is growing and technological innovation is happening small scale, the country is able to afford new energy technologies. The innovations are small and simple. In a future with an increase of internal conflicts and an increase in the impacts of droughts, the country relapses again in civil unrest, in which no energy capacity can be built. Energy access becomes little in a state of war, and no shift can be made to renewable energy use. The land is further degraded due to the massive impacts of climate change and failed policies. Conflicts between clans over food and water increase due to shortages. In a future with little energy access and an energy mix based on fossil fuels, the demand of energy is higher than the supply, which leads to higher prices and an unequal distribution of energy. There is no availability of energy in rural areas. The network is still dominated by fossil fuel companies who do not pay taxes and maintain a monopoly. A future with an increase in pastoralism will require innovative solutions. Portable energy supply and widespread energy grids are created where the pastoralists can gain energy. Centralized and public education to manage these grids focuses on the empowerment of minorities and reduces inequality. The scenarios provided us with insights on how our pathway should be improved to be fruitful in different circumstances. The pathway should, for example, focus more on bottom-up peacemaking between clans to build resilience for future conflicts. Also, stronger international relations might be necessary from a top-down perspective to be of aid in future civil unrest. Providing more elaborate financing options will further improve the capability of actors to be self-sustainable and loosen power structures between suppliers. Also, stronger national laws are needed that regulate the electricity industry.
The upscaling of the pathway will look as follows. In terms of the global impact of the pathway, the largest impact will be caused by setting an example for other developing countries in the world. It will provide an example of how to change the system towards renewable energy before they are stuck in the current problematic energy system. This is especially useful for countries with a similar situation in terms of energy access. In terms of the timescaling of the pathway, a number of aspects contribute to ensure the pathway will be deep and long-lasting. Firstly, community engagement will create an environment in which conflict is reduced. Secondly, stabilizing the economy will reduce corruption and enable the population to improve both the economy and sustainable energy sources. Thirdly, enhancing education in Somalia will provide Somalis to even further reduce conflict and corruption, while enabling themselves to ensure economic growth, sustainable energy, and reduction of ecological impact. All in all, the pathway becomes more effective the more effect it has already had. The transformation will affect the SDGs in Somalia through a number of impacts. The energy system transformation increases availability and decentralizes the production while reducing the use of fossil fuels. Additionally, new jobs will become available within the energy system, thus enhancing the economy through both energy production and GDP increase. Furthermore, land degradation should not increase if it is used in a sustainable manner, while increasing renewable energy sources contributes to combating climate change. This could then help decrease the effects of climate change, such as desertification. Final vision of the pathway results in that Somalia is no longer known as the complicated part of the world, but rather a pioneer in the renewable energy industry. Conflict is a matter of the past, and Somalia is an independent, self-sustaining country that sets an example of a sustainable transformation. Through investing in themselves and their environment, the people of Somalia will have contributed to a transition capable of energizing the world.